All right, 7:43 in studio right now is Mike Acquaviva. He is a former United States Marine, Clinton High School graduate, veteran of the war in Afghanistan. And while there, he was the subject of an HBO documentary. And this goes back to February of 2010. U.S. Marines launched in Afghanistan Operation Mushtarak. How do I pronounce that?
Mushtarak.
Mushtarak, okay. And the biggest operation since the start of the Afghan War. The main target was the Taliban stronghold, a town in Helmand province. Journalist Ben Anderson, who spent 2 months with the American forces, offers an extraordinarily intimate look at the brutal realities of modern-day warfare. And Mike is in studio now. I'm told you're very opinionated.
Yes, sir.
You've earned that right.
Absolutely.
I believe you have. So tell us what it was like.
Man, I mean, where do you begin? The war itself, it's not as conventional as people think. I mean, and you're fighting people who wear, civilian clothing. Yeah. And, one moment you'd be shaking the hands with the enemy and never know it. And then 10 minutes later, they'd be shooting you at the back.
So you even have to worry about women and children.
Not me, specifically, but I know other troops did, for sure.
And are we in the right? Are we there? Are we doing the right thing? Are we? Does the general public there?
Yes.
Are they with us?
Yes and no. The majority of people over there are really, really kind people, and all they really want to know is
probably.
Oh yeah, I mean the highest technology for farming is the shovel, really, from where I was. But the majority of people are really nice and kind and humble. They just want to know who's in charge and what laws to follow.
Yeah.
But honestly, as far as the war goes, they need to take up arms and defend their own country. I mean, to what extent do we supply our troops and our soldiers and our supplies of money over there? At one point they had to stand up and say, we're going to take our country back. We can't rely on somebody else.
Are we doing the fact that we're the president seemed to be pulling everybody out, and now the criticism is that by pulling everybody out, you've allowed the ISIS to exist and to really gain a stronghold. So now we're slowly, you talk about creeping. We're slowly building up more and more forces over there. Is that the right thing to do? Are we going to be able to stop ISIS?
Well, the biggest problem with that is, we're not looking at X number of fighters. We're trying to fight an idea, and that's the hardest thing. You're trying to stop an idea, and with every new generation, there's new younger kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old who are being taught to hate America, and kill infidels. I mean, that's really the problem.
Which, by the way, is anyone who doesn't follow those very, very traditional rules of the Muslim faith.
That's correct.
And you could be a Muslim, but more progressive, and you could be killed as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they have no, no mercy for even their own people sometimes.
What is interesting too, and if you look back at the history of the United States in war, and you look at the way we use the draft, but we don't use the draft anymore, because that was very public and it was a real problem. Certainly, was a big problem for the Johnson and the Nixon administration back during Vietnam. So the way we've done this, without ever thinking about it, we're in the midst of the longest war in the history of the country. But nobody's really paying attention because we're just using the National Guard. So we're just filtering these people back 2 and 3 times and sometimes more. How do you feel about that? It's kind of a way to slide it in under the public's eye, so we pay no attention to guys like you that just keep having to go back.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, it's a whole volunteer force, and I chose to join, 9/11. I was 11 years old. I made the decision, I want to fight these people.
Yeah.
I want to protect my country and serve my country. But it's going on for too long. They sent us over there with our hands tied, with a list of rules, and it almost made it impossible to fight and defeat the enemy. But like I said before, the Afghan people, the Iraqi people, they need to stand up and they need to take back their own countries.
It doesn't seem they can do that though. So now what do we do? There becomes the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christine, by the way, who's off via remote right now, is a veteran. And Christine, you've watched this. It's amazing how the military is being used, how they use the National Guard to do this in a way that stays kind of under the radar when it comes to the public.
And I'm so happy that you mentioned that. And you and I have talked about this off air. I actually joined the Air National Guard and was activated while I was in basic training and was told, you are going to be heading overseas, which I didn't on the ground, but I did, through working as a mechanic, as a crew chief for the Air Force. But I didn't, actually see hand-to-hand combat or anything like that. But I was activated as soon as I was in basic training. So I think the Air National Guard is just as much the, United States Air Force, the all of the reserves, the Army Reserve, the Army National Guard, they're all a part of it now. And there's no distinction. You don't serve stateside anymore.
If we had a draft, we as the public would be paying far more attention to this. You'd be putting people in that weren't volunteers. You'd be putting people in that did not want to go. There'd be protests, and I think this stuff would end much quicker. Andrew, but this is political. That's where Washington gets involved, and people preserving their. There's a story that Nixon kept the Vietnam War going for political reasons. That they didn't want us, and this is fact. That they did not want to end the war before the election because they thought it would cost them the election. So can you imagine keeping the war and keeping those guys over there in Vietnam so that he could win that election, and then ultimately we know what happened after that. Andrew, go ahead.
Mike, one of the points that you made was that the Iraqi people and the people in Afghanistan need to take up arms and take their country back. You and I have had conversations about this, and this kind of swings into your opinion on what the Second Amendment actually means. And it's not an amendment to protect hunters. It's an amendment to protect the American people from a tyrannical government. So, what are your thoughts? That's your thought on that. It's not really about that, but it's about having the right to, if there was ever a case where the United States would have to do that, then they'd be able to.
Well, our founding fathers were, they weren't worried about deer, taking over the country. They were worried about another tyrannical, even ourselves at one point.
Right.
And that's why they put the Second Amendment there, so that if that point ever came, the people were the defense against that.
So what is your opinion then on everything that's going on today on gun restrictions, on because most times when you talk about it, it's almost always when people talk about the Second Amendment, we're talking about hunting, we're talking about target shooting and stuff like that.
The whole gun control idea, I just find it really, really ridiculous. You're trying to make a law against, trying to stop somebody from murdering you, raping you, robbing you. All those three things. You saw this
firsthand.
Yeah.
You could, if you were to try to take the weapons away from these people in Afghanistan, it's an ideology that needs to be defeated, not necessarily what they put in their hands.
There's a reason why they sent us to Afghanistan with guns and not signs saying that this is a gun-free country, turn over your guns.
All right. Okay. I'm going to ask you.
Question on the National Guard. I see these advertisements all the time. It's one weekend a month, 2 weeks a year.
Yeah.
These guys are doing tours in Afghanistan, and is that what you're saying?
This was decided after Vietnam, how we were going to populate our military. It was decided that they would use the National Guard, and that's what happens today. So you can be placed on. And Christine, it's what happened to you, right?
Right. I was prepared to go overseas. That's actually what I wanted to do at that point in my life. But I joined, under the supposition that would be a volunteer thing, not that, I would automatically go in and be activated while I was in basic training. And that was the other thing, my employer had said, we'll give you, a leave of absence for your 6 weeks of basic training and then your, other training that's supposed to be stateside. And when I got there, and after I had signed the contract, my basic training was, I forget now, but I think 7 or 8 weeks long, and then I was sent away for 7 months of training. So it's not as it is in the commercials.
The Weekend Warrior thing is no more. That doesn't really exist anymore. But you signed up. You signed up for the Marines.
Yep, active duty.
And it was 9/11 that inspired you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we certainly thank you for your service.
And thank you for your support.
And talk about the documentary, what people are able to see. And by the way, this is available online as well.
You can get it on YouTube,
But talk about that.
The documentary itself?
Yeah.
They twisted some things, they portrayed, Bravo company, my company, as sometimes as third platoon. Obviously there's three platoons, or four platoons really, integrated with weapons platoon. It was, fairly accurate, and I mean,
describe what it was like on a daily basis. You wake up in the morning. I mean, most of us, the first time you see the Niagara Falls, you look at it like, wow, that's incredible. First time you see the Grand Canyon, man, it's incredible. The first time you had to fly in there and you saw the deserts and the mountains of Afghanistan, what was that? What were you thinking?
Honestly, I'm ready to let's go find the bad guys.
Yeah,
let's go get them. I mean, it took about 2.5, 3 weeks from the time I initially landed in Afghanistan to go through, kind of a follow up, say, hey, this is where we're going, this is what we're doing. Let's get ready for IEDs. Let's get ready for ambushes, counter ambushes, stuff like that. I mean, it's an adrenaline rush for sure.
Yeah.
Flying in there, early morning, just ready for whatever. And I mean, that was 19 years old at that point.
Wow.
First time firing a weapon, in combat.
And what combat did you come? Did you come in contact with? Talk about what you went through personally.
Yeah, I mean, hearing the snaps and whizzes and bullets coming within inches of your head, and and towards the end of it, you kind of got numb to it, and it's not as easy as Hollywood likes to portray. There's the bad guy. Shoot him, kill him. It's not like that. Really, you're going off of the report of the rifle. So you hear the bullet cracking over, breaking the sound barrier first, and then you hear the bang of the rifle. So it sounds like crack, bang, and that time difference in between, that's your distance. So from the time you hear the crack to the time you hear the bang.
So that you're judging distance based on that, like we would lightning,
yep,
thunder and lightning.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So and I want to ask one of the scenes of the documentary that Paige Brown, who works here at the office, is actually good friends with Mike as well from high school, and she was showing me some of the scenes of the documentary. And one of the scenes, and you talk about becoming numb to it. I mean, this is probably on a regular, everyday basis that you're dealing with the bullets being close to you and all that. I mean, you still have a job to do, and you guys did it. But how do you successfully accomplish that job or that mission, knowing that there's that threat? I mean, how was that adjustment period for you?
I mean, overwhelming suppressive firepower. If they return one bullet, you return 10. And just break their will, and that's what we did. Just suppress them. A lot of times they would try to sucker us in and try to lure us in, so they didn't know where we were walking, for example, right? And say, okay, they want us to go through this field or go into this building to get to them, right? Mm-hmm. So they would set up somewhere so that we would do that.
So you had to learn that they're being trapped.
Yeah, and they'd be booby trapped there. So we just stayed in place most of the times, or we would take a backwards approach to it. Say, okay, we're not going to go this direct route. Let's try to flank them this way, or
and that's stuff because basically the same issues they dealt with in Vietnam, where
sure.
you're over in their territory, they know all about it. This is stuff that you can't really plan ahead. You got to just wait and see what happens.
Absolutely.
Tell me, how are you? So you're home. It has to be lingering in your mind. I mean, you hear people, they're in a car accident and they have nightmares over it. How are you?
Honestly, I don't really lose sleep at night. I mean, there's some things that I don't like to talk about, some things I don't like to recall and think about, but I know it's there. It's just part of me. It's made me who I am now. So if I can go back do it again, I would. I wouldn't change a thing.
And when you as you're at your home and you're reflecting on what you accomplished, what good did you? I mean, when you come away, is there anything you say, boy, we did this and we accomplished this and we did this? What's in your mind?
I mean, the town of Marj that we went to, it was heavily Taliban controlled, and people were afraid for the most part.
Yeah.
And some people liked them, some people didn't. So I mean, I take away, maybe the bad guys we killed over there, maybe we stopped them from coming over here.
Mm-hmm.
Stop them there before they get here. But
because that's the ultimate objective for them. Is that really the ultimate goal? Is to get to America and hurt Americans? Westerners,
non-believers, really, and anybody that they can, possibly. The more, the better. in these people's minds.
And did you form any relationships over there with people over there? Obviously, I'm sure with people that you went over there with, but what about people over there?
Absolutely. On my second deployment, I was a squad leader. I learned Pashto, the language over there. Mm-hmm. And when we would go out on patrol, I would talk to locals and know their names, know their faces, know how many kids they had. And, we've actually formed relationships with people. And, and I took, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Actually building a relationship, building that bond. And, they knew my name and, smiled, shook my hand and, invited my my Marines in and gave them tea, gave them chai, gave them bread. So it was, that part was very humbling.
Yeah. And you got to be thinking those little kids having to grow up in that world is just, it's horrific to think about.
Oh, it really is. Just that country's been war-torn for, the Russians were there in the 80s.
I'm not sure how we think we're going to go in and do what the Russians couldn't do.
Those people are so out of touch. When we landed there, they thought we were the Russians coming back.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. Pretty incredible. So, in closing, what do you want people to know?
I guess as a country, we really need to unite. The media is driving a wedge between the races and with labels and everything. We really need to unite as a people and come together. Black, white, brown, pink, purple doesn't matter. If you're an American, you live in this country, stand up for it. Love your neighbor. Have those morals again. This country's, it's like a foreign land.
Yeah.
It really has become a place where, the media is so in control of everything and portrays everything. And, this whole racial division is really, it's got to stop.
Yeah.
Just got to love each other. And that's the biggest thing I take away from it. And, our Bill of Rights and our Constitution is the greatest written document of freedom the world has ever seen in the history of the world. And we got to hold on to that, because if we lose it, we're going to lose everything.
How did you handle, I'm assuming you're Christian. How did you handle their Muslim faith?
I accept it. I supported it, and that's your religion. I don't care what you believe in.
Yeah.
You can pray to the holy turtle.
Right.
And so long as that turtle doesn't tell you to kill other people for not believing in the turtle, that's where I draw the line. So believe what you want to believe, or don't believe at all. Just as long as you're not hurting anybody else in the process of practicing your faith.
And they seem to be preying on these young, poor, especially males that have nothing, and they're coming in and they're using the religion to infect their minds with this belief that they're doing God's work by killing people like us,
and they'll be rewarded for it.
Yeah,
which is even that's the scariest part, is when you're ingrained that this is what you're going to be rewarded for in heaven.
Well, Mike, we appreciate your service and the fact that you wanted to come in and talk to us today and talk about what you went through. The documentary, again, is what is it called? The title is
The Battle for Marja.
Okay, and it's available. You could Google it; it'll come up on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I believe it's on Blu-ray. I'm sure you can find it somewhere. Amazon.
Are you done? By the way, you won't have to go back.
Yeah, my contract's up.
How many times you been?
2 times.
Two times
to Afghanistan. Yep.
2 times was a lot.
Yeah.
But you do it all over again.
If I could go back, change it, I wouldn't change a thing. Amazing people from all over the countries, and form a brotherhood, bonds that will last forever.
Mike Acquaviva, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service. WIBX Utica, Rome.